everybody, my name is Kayla and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be if genres were people. That's right. So I had this idea kind of pop in my head a couple weeks ago and I was like, that might be a fun idea. And I was like, well, it's gonna be a little bit of a different video, put it up on a poll, and you guys seem to want to see it, so here we are. So this video is definitely way different than how I normally film videos. This is very edited, lots of music, lots of over talk, so hopefully you enjoy this. I took a lot of creative liberties with this, and I don't know, I'm really excited with how it turned out. So, I hope you enjoy! In my mind, if fantasy were a person, this person would be very passionate about whatever they do, work only in extremes on the emotional scale. And fantasy is the type of person that I imagine would always be conflicted about something. Fantasy is a very creative being. I think every single genre has their creative talents, obviously. And so I imagine fantasy would be able to weave these worlds, these ideologies, and this dream for a better world. In this, I imagine if fantasy were a person, they would have a lot of inner struggles with who they're meant to be, who the world sees, and who they really are on the inside. And fantasy also is conflicted because they're oftentimes put in charge of groups, people, all these different things that they didn't always ask for. And if fantasy were a person, this person would wield a lot of power. But in all of this, I feel fantasy is one of the most misunderstood genres, and if it were a person, this would translate as well. And I think fantasy, while having a large crowd, would be dependent on very few. Fantasy would often struggle with self-identity because, like I mentioned earlier, there's a fine line between who they are for the world and who they actually want to be. But above all, fantasy would be a protector. If fantasy was a person, this would be the person that would stand up for something, even if they're standing alone. If contemporary were a person, I imagine them to be very soft and very delicate in between these three genres. If contemporary were a person, I imagine that they would love to spend their time by bodies of water in gardens surrounded by their close friends. In this, if contemporary were a person, I imagine that they would want to live a quieter life, something simple, something peaceful. Whereas fantasy is a very intense person, contemporary is very the opposite. However, contemporary would also have a lot of high expectations. They live in the clouds. And so when you have all these expectations up here, it's kind of easy to get let down. But thankfully, if contemporary were a person, they would have a strong support group and friends close to them that can help pick them up when they're low. However, contemporary would be one of the most loyalist people you will ever meet. And I imagine that they would be a light in a very, very dark world. I imagine science fiction to be actually the rebel of this group, not fantasy. While fantasy is often misunderstood, I feel like science fiction is the one that stands apart the most, the lone wolf, if you will, of these genres. Science fiction as an individual would be the most intelligent of this group, thinking with their head, with facts, before their emotions. However, they do struggle with handling their emotions because they're often fact-driven. And science fiction would use their intelligence to challenge society for the better, and not in a loud, boisterous way using people in massive groups like fantasy would, but with smaller movements, leading headways on projects, that type of thing. Science fiction, while as a loner, is able to survive in major groups. They can fit in with people that like the same things that they do. So they prefer to be on their own, but as science fiction were a person, they would thrive in groups of similar mentality. In this, science fiction is the best at communication. Science fiction, like contemporary, likes to live in the clouds, likes to live in dreams. I think that's a commonality between all three of these genres, actually. And science fiction can get lost in pleasurable points of life and oftentimes has to be reeled back into reality, because they're often innovative. They're thinking about what could be better, how they can pick something apart. But above all, science fiction, if it were a person, would be the explorer. While fantasy would be a conqueror and contemporary would be a peacemaker, science fiction would be the one to explore, to go out, and to push the limits. And no doubt, be the pioneer in a new project or terrain. Alright everybody, so that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe down below and hit the bell icon to be notified every time I upload a video. If you have any other book recommendations, let me know down below, or other book videos. I got a lot of time, obviously, so let me know down below. Check out my other videos, read lots of books, have an amazing day, and be great people, I guess. Bye guys!